Welcome back to an episode of Clutch Gene Sports. I'm your host, Marco Martinez. 49ers have made a big signing. They've also made a big release recently. A lot of things are moving, a lot of parts. Teams are signing players. The free agency period has started. Technically, it's considered the tampering period. But I'm going to talk to you real briefly about the 49ers releasing Arik Armstead, signing Leonard Floyd, and also placing a tender on Jawan Jennings right after this. Welcome back to an episode of Clutch Gene Sports. I'm your host, Marco. If you haven't heard, Arik Armstead is scheduled to be released by the 49ers. Interesting topic to be going on with Arik Armstead for the 49ers. Reason is he's been the longest tenured 49er during the Shanahan era. He lasted a few other eras, but he's the longest tenured player. Now with Arik Armstead, looking at his contract wise and stuff like that, the Niners do save money. They are going to release him on. They're scheduled to. They plan on releasing him starting on Wednesday. So looking at the contract, it's supposed to be, in my opinion, going to be a post June 1st release. And what happens with that is post June 1st, the Niners will eat $10 million this year and $15 million next year. And then they'll take on a $17 million cap saving. But the interesting part is they're truly not gaining $17 million in cap space. What happens is the 49ers cannot use that cap savings to sign anyone now. So essentially what they have to do is they have to wait until June 1st in order to use that $17 million, which essentially means the 49ers will be using that money on their draft class or to extend other guys like Brandon Ayuk, Denomina Lenore, Charvarius Ward, which I think the Niners should do now, which allows them to create cap space, which they may have already have a restructure on the table with him or potentially a contract extension. But the reason why the Arik Armstead release is very interesting is they initially tried to work out a restructured contract. Now, what happened was the 49ers and Arik Armstead could not come to terms on a restructured deal. So it caused the 49ers to explain to Arik Armstead, you know what, we're not planning on keeping you unless you restructure. Arik Armstead opted to be released. I would rather be a free agent, go make some more money because I'm already guaranteed $25 million from you guys. You're paying me $10 million this year, $15 million next year to play for another team, and I could go make some more money. Arik Armstead's biggest role on the 49ers was to 100% be a true run stuffer. But this season, he finally put things together. Before he got injured, he was putting it together as a pass rusher. His best year as a pass rusher. As things come in, I'll be announcing whenever someone signs with another team as well, just so you guys are updated with things. In Commanderland, where Adam Peters is, he recently just signed Austin Eckler to a 2-year, $11.4 million deal. Ronald Darby just signed a 2-year, $10 million deal. When I'm looking at things, I definitely think the 49ers definitely needed to clear up some space to get younger, a little more athletic. It's kind of hard to keep a guy like Arik Armstead around when he's constantly injured, especially at that price that he was at. So it's definitely interesting for that. Now, the 49ers definitely just made a big splash signing. They just signed Leonard Floyd to the Niners on a 2-year, $20 million deal with the with the upward mobility of it being $24 million. The 49ers are all in, hopefully. They signed Leonard Floyd to the 49ers to the team to play opposite of Nick Bosa. What does this mean for me when I'm looking at this signing? Signs to the 49ers. The way I look at it is two different ways. The 49ers want to truly go all in and they also want to make sure they're not overspending. They were linked to Daniil Hunter. They were linked to Bryce Huff prior to the Leonard Floyd signing. They opted to go Leonard Floyd. Bryce Huff signed for $57 million over, I believe, 3 years. Daniil Hunter is expecting to receive around $20 million per year. The 49ers eventually ended up getting Leonard Floyd, who's 31 years old right now, becomes 32 when the season starts. For 2 years, $20 million. First year, he's receiving $12 million, and he'll receive $8 million in the second year. Very, very durable player. He's played in over 16 games since 2018. Played in 17 games as well. Those games that once the season became a 17-game season. He's a player with 9 sacks in each of the last 4 seasons. He's just one of 3 players to do so, with Myles Garrett and Hassan Reddick. Very interesting stat right there. I mean, he's a very durable. He's a get after the quarterback kind of guy. I don't. When I initially saw the signing, I'll be honest with you, my initial reaction was, does it move the needle for me? If the 49ers truly want to get over the hump and win a championship, it doesn't move the needle. So for me, when I'm looking at things, what are the Niners' weak points? Where's their weaknesses on this team? When I look at them, it's 100% their secondary with Ambry Thomas, their offensive line, whether you think it's center, right guard, or right tackle. Those are bigger weak links in the defensive line. You have Nick Bosa, you have Javon Hargrave. After that, there's not really anyone on the defensive line who essentially is primed to start after the release of Armstead. So they go out and they sign Leonard Floyd, who's very durable, could get after the quarterback, 39.5 sacks in the last 4 years. But their secondary is still an issue. Their offensive line is still an issue. They have not created any cap space, as far as we know, to make another big move. There's still a lot of corners out there. You have a few corners, just to name a few. Kendall Fuller. You also have Levi Wallace out there. You got Kenny Moore. Those are just a few. They're not the top of my list. Top free agents still on the market. I would definitely be looking to upgrade at corner. Now, Leonard Floyd does bring you some run defending. He also does bring you the ability to get after the quarterback opposite of Nick Bosa. This is the best pass rusher the 49ers have had opposite of Bosa since they truly had Dee Ford. Now, we could argue maybe this is the missing link. I don't think it is. It doesn't make sense for the 49ers to sign an edge rusher when Super Bowls lately have been won by teams with an elite secondary. Now they got him on a very good deal. Only $12 million is guaranteed of the 20. So essentially next year it's a 1-year $12 million deal. The way I look at it is next year they could cut him and they can move on. If it's not the right choice, they don't owe him anything after next year because it's a $12 million fully guaranteed, and that's coming in year 1. So year 2 they can move off of Leonard Floyd easily, and they're going to have $8 million in cap space to work with there. Now, if I'm looking at the 49ers cornerback situation, now they've already addressed the edge rushing position with Leonard Floyd. They could go to defensive tackle to upgrade the interior of that defensive line after losing Arik Armstead to a release to create cap space. Some of the guys I'm looking at for free agency: Adoree Jackson from the New York Giants, Darius Williams just signed, Kendall Fuller, Michael Davis, who played under Brandon Staley, Kenny Moore, Avonte Maddox, who, in my opinion, I would stay away from. But if you go farther down, you could get guys like Keyshawn Nixon, who may be a candidate. He may not get much. He could play inside, he could play outside, but he's a special team guy. Are they going to go after something like that? I'm very curious to see what the Niners do at corner, because rolling out Ambry Thomas week to week, Donald Lenore inside, you have a weak link. It's Ambry Thomas. You can't really go man across the board because you're going to get picked apart with Ambry Thomas being in that back end. So I'm looking at things right now. The way it looks like is the Niners should address the secondary at some point, whether that's the draft or free agency. But what does this mean for the 49ers plans heading into the draft? Like, that's where I'm looking at it is, what are the plans? You just signed an edge rusher. You just cut a defensive tackle who arguably one of your better defensive tackles on the team. I think he might be the best defensive tackle and more underrated. People like to say Hargrave is up there, but Hargrave isn't as good of a run defender. Wasn't great in as rushing the passer and pass pro, and pass rushing, not pass pro. Sorry about that. But when I'm looking at things, the Niners truly don't have the capability of fully investing where they need to. Offensive line, secondary, right? Those are the two spots they have not invested in yet. You could say defensive tackle, but they just released Armstead, so doesn't look like they're going to invest along the interior defensive line. They're out free agency. If it is, probably going to be a much cheaper guy. So looking at it in the draft, they're going to have offensive line as of now. This is March 11th, 420. As of now, they're in the draft. They could address offensive line, corner, defensive tackle. Because those are the top three needs. I don't see linebacker for replacing Dre Greenlaw. I know a lot of people want that to happen because of the injury of putting someone who could play while he's gone. I don't see that happening. I know a lot of people are interested in getting another tight end 2. I just don't see the Niners taking a tight end at pick 31. So when I'm looking at things, I definitely think the Niners right now are in prime position to take an offensive lineman at 31, trade up to get an offensive lineman, whether they think that their guy is going to go a lot earlier. But if a corner falls, they're in a prime position to take a corner. Defensive tackle could possibly be there. And if that's there, they got to go best player available. And the Niners have put themselves in a prime position after signing Colton McKivitz to a 1-year, $7 million extension, signing Leonard Floyd to a 2-year, $20 million deal with $12 million being guaranteed in that first year, releasing Armstead. They're in a prime position to go best player available at pick 31. And once they do that, depending on what it is, it's going to either piss a lot of Niner fans off or make a lot of Niner fans happy. Because if they don't address the offensive line in free agency and they pass on an offensive lineman at pick 31 to go defensive tackle, that means a few of their last first round picks would have been on defensive tackle, or their last first pick in the draft, including Drake Jackson. Do the Niners truly believe defensive tackle is more important, or the defensive line is more important than keeping the quarterback upright? You got a franchise quarterback in Brock Purdy, and you're not taking care of him. Address the offensive line. The quarterback's what wins you championships, not the defense. It was proven last year. Patrick Mahomes gets sacked a few times in that first half. After that, defense went pretty much cold. Couldn't get after the quarterback. The Niners have a very solid defensive line. Their secondary wasn't. Now take a look at Kansas City. Secondary's phenomenal. D-line, Chris Jones, and a bunch of quality starters. Nothing crazy along that D-line. But an elite secondary with an elite quarterback who they invested a lot of money in on their interior offensive line. They invested on the offensive tackles, even though you could argue they weren't good. They still tried to invest in that position. The Niners are doing complete opposite. They're not investing on the offensive line, but instead, they would rather put, as of right now, they have roughly $60 million. $60 million included on their offensive line. So when I'm looking at things, it's definitely an interesting way for the 49ers to address roster building. They have $20 million invested in Hargrave, 20 plus in Nick Bosa. They're going to be paying roughly $15 million, actually $10 million this year. So if you put the math together, that's 20, 30 plus another 20. That's around $50 million invested in the D line. The offensive line doesn't. It's Trent Williams and a bunch of young players who don't get paid much. That's not a way to win a Super Bowl. The secondary, they paid Charvarius Ward a reasonable contract. Then they got Denominator Lenore on a rookie deal, Avery Thomas on a rookie deal, who is not a good corner. Your two safeties are on rookie deals. The way they're building the roster for 2024 football is not the right way to build a roster. The NFL is a pass-heavy league dominated by the quarterback, and if you don't have a great secondary, you're going to get beat. Shout out to my guy Sunil, who will be there at 31 at offensive tackle. Based off of what I've seen and what I've heard, it definitely sounds like Kingsley Suamataia is going to be there. Jordan Morgan, who's more of a guard, but I think he should be given the opportunity to play tackle to start his career. And then from there, they're probably going to have to trade up to get Roger Rosengart in from University of Washington. Very interesting. Niners, former 49er, Azeez Al-Shaair is expected to sign with D'Amico Ryans and the Houston Texans. Hey, D'Amico gets his guy. Quality linebacker, very good linebacker. Now, I know Jesse Naylor of Last Second Sports went on yesterday and he asked me if he could say something. I shared with him and I said, you know what? Go ahead. So, the Detroit Lions, before they traded for Carlton Davis from Tampa Bay, they were in on Greg Newsome from the Cleveland Browns. The 49ers have called on Greg Newsome. I don't know if they make the trade, but they definitely have called on him. I mean, I think that'd be the best corner out there available if you're not going to get a Dory Jackson. And I'm not too sure how much a Dory Jackson would net. I'm guessing based off of what Spot Rack says, 11.3 million. 11.3 million at corner is more valuable, in my opinion, than the 12 million we're spending on the edge rusher of Leonard Floyd. That's just my opinion. But Greg Newsome, if you could get him for a second round pick. Now we just saw Brian Burns get traded for a second and a fifth and get paid. If you could trade a second, maybe a third straight up for Greg Newsome to be a starting corner on your roster, you got to do it. I think that's where the Niners should target, because Martin Emerson, a young player for the Cleveland Browns, is going to start starting. He's going to push the start. Greg Newsome's going to need a payday in about a year. They are already paying Denzel Ward a corner. They have an expensive defensive lineman, Myles Garrett, expensive safeties and linebackers. So we're looking at it. Greg Newsome's available. Go get him. Go get your guy. Good deal for Azeez Al-Shaair, 3-year, $34 million. Also, Seattle Seahawks lose linebacker Jordan Brooks on a 3-year deal for $30 million, headed to the Miami Dolphins. The Detroit Lions also earlier signed Marcus Davenport on a 1-year, $10.5 million deal. At max, the base is around $6.5 million. Emiliano says knew Azeez was going to D'Amico over going back to the Niners and Kyle. D'Amico is talented, good with players. Also, Azeez is pricey, and Texas has no state taxes. I don't understand why anyone ever said Azeez Al-Shaair was ever going to be a 49er. As I'm tweeting it out, I don't get why the 49ers or why fans thought we could afford or get Azeez on a cheap deal. Saw a few people saying that they would be able to get him on for like $5 to $6 million. Never made sense. Never made sense. On a 1-year deal, a player is not going to pass on getting a good payday because he has loyalty or he loves playing for a team. At the end of the day, these players want to get paid. They don't care about going to a team and being on that team because he has friends there or he likes Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. Never understood it. Truly never understood it. Didn't make sense to me at all from the jump. Now, the 49ers, hopefully they make another move before the end of the night. I will jump back on if the Niners make another move. Plan to release Arik Armstead. Exactly, Sunil. If we look at Aziz Al-Shair's contract, right? Like he had a 1-year contract, I believe, from the Tennessee Titans for $5 million. He had started out his career with the Niners 3 years, 1.7 mil, and then he got tendered for 1 year, 3.9, and then got a $5 million contract with the Titans. Dude, they're not taking pay cuts, especially when they never gotten paid. Now, back to it, the Niners released Arik Armstead. They signed Leonard Floyd. They tendered Jawan Jennings with a second round tender, so he would be making around $5 million this year. But it also gives them the opportunity to negotiate a longer deal. Hopefully, they could get that number down or up, whatever they decide to do. Now, the 49ers just signed, I believe, Javon Kinlaw. I don't know if it's been reported yet, but the 49ers are planning on signing Javon Kinlaw. I just got a text message that they're planning on signing Javon Kinlaw. Let me figure this out because I've never had this done while I'm live, getting a text message live. So their plan is to bring Javon Kinlaw back, but Javon Kinlaw is garnering interest from a few teams. So the plan is to bring him back. So they have not yet signed him. Definitely going to be interesting. Actually, Sunil, I think Washington has done a pretty good job addressing the trenches first, getting a center, getting an edge rusher. Believe they got a running back, uh, another offensive lineman, I believe, or could be wrong. But I felt like had a good day today. They're not overspending. They're not doing anything crazy on the market, not resetting anything. The Patriots are signing versatile offensive line Michael Onwenu, one of their cornerstone players, on a 3-year, $57 million deal. 38 of it is guaranteed. So the $57 million over 3 years, man, that's 19 per year. Not bad for him. A really good contract. So looking at things, based off of the text I got, the Niners do plan on bringing Javon Kinlaw back. They're trying to negotiate something with him right now. But there's a few teams that are getting in the way. They're negotiating with him as well. Now, the 49ers drafted him in place of Arik Armstead, which makes this very interesting. They then released Armstead, signed Leonard Floyd. So let's see what everything happens. I know Sunil says, what do you make of the report? The 49ers didn't turn in any transactions today. Does that mean Armstead isn't cut quite yet and can work out a deal? So, yeah, absolutely. So that's why I said on my title, I made sure I put the right thing, is that they're set to release him. But they don't really have to put it in yet, the paperwork. They're not getting that deal, the money, until post June 1st. So for me, it doesn't make sense for the 49ers to truly put in paperwork if they could continue to try to negotiate and keep him. It just doesn't make sense to me. Like I get people were like, "Oh, this means more than like what Matt Mayoko saying this for a reason." I don't think so. I think this is just him saying that he hasn't seen nothing. They haven't. They can't put any paperwork in for Leonard Floyd. You can't until Wednesday because it's the start of the new league year. Today is just technically tampering period where you could negotiate contracts and tamper with players. And Sunil's last question is, are there any free agent offensive linemen the 49ers should be in on, or should they just draft? So I personally think the Niners should have been in on the defensive line, the offensive line market. But the way some of these interior offensive linemen got paid, it makes sense that they're not in on the market. And if they're truly going to go in on the market, I'm looking at a guard like Andres Pete. But does he fit the system? He's already 30. He's been paid. I don't know that the Niners go after someone like that. The guy I'm interested in on, Connor Williams. He hasn't been signed yet. That's where I would probably, hey, you know what? His spot rack has him at 13.5. He could play center. He could play guard. I would immediately go cut Brendel, release him post June 1st, save that $4 million and put it towards a quality center. Jonah Williams, right tackle, projected to get 10.8 from spot rack. You're paying your right tackle $7 million next year. Doesn't make sense to me. There's also Aaron Brewer out there from the Tennessee Titans, who was a center for them. You could bring in and have him compete. But if they want to go get a guard that no one's name, that his name's not being thrown out there, Sunil, Nick Allegretti from the Kansas City Chiefs. That's where I would go sign. Shouldn't command a heavy payday. Quality offensive lineman. We saw what he did with a torn elbow against the 49ers in the Super Bowl. I'm 100% going and definitely looking at the interior offensive line, whether it's center, guard. I just don't get why they extended Colton McKivitz when they technically didn't have to. When you look at Colton McKivitz's deal, you didn't have to extend him until post draft if you couldn't get someone. You didn't have to give him a deal until after training camp or during training camp. That didn't make sense to me. I think I'm not worried about the price. The timing of it just didn't make sense. Especially because they already had Arik Armstead's deal. They already were trying to restructure that. They already restructured Fred Warner, who, congratulations on Fred Warner. Him and his wife just had their baby. Congratulations there. So for me, I'm very confused. Now, the 49ers have a lot to make up on. They could go get a right guard, a center, a right tackle as we speak. So, 49ers are out with the old, Arik Armstead, who was a very, very talented player but could not stay healthy. But they're in with an older player. I want to say old, but they're in with an old player who's going to be 32 at the start of the season, Leonard Floyd, on essentially it's a 1 year, $12 million deal, the way it was structured on the 49ers end. So it's a 1 year, $12 million deal. So they're out with the old who couldn't stay healthy. They're in with the around the same age, but he's very durable, could get after the quarterback opposite of Nick Bosa. A la D Ford, kind of like speed rusher off the edge, very good run defender. Played under Brandon Staley, who is now with the 49ers defensive coaching staff. So that there's ties there. Had his best year under Brandon Staley when they went with the Los Angeles Rams. So excited to see how it works. I don't think this is the move that puts the 49ers over the top to win a Super Bowl. I think they're still having to figure it out at the corner position and offensive line. As Sunil says, I would have thought the 49ers would put a lot more emphasis on secondary with who they interviewed for defensive coordinator, but no moves yet. No moves yet. Yes, they interviewed a lot of secondary coaches. Thought they would go fix the secondary. They didn't. Confusing. Don't know why that's not happening. The 49ers are definitely one of those teams where they do things their way. And they've said it from the beginning. We truly believe that championships are won in the trenches, which is weird because they address the defensive line, but they don't address the offensive line. So they must really, truly believe that the Super Bowls are won by the defensive line. Because the way I look at it is if you truly believe the trenches win Super Bowls, you're signing offensive linemen, you're drafting offensive linemen higher, you're trying to put capital in the offensive line. That's where I am blown away because they have said you win Super Bowls in the trenches, and they have not yet put capital that way. They drafted Mike McGlinchey their first year. I thought that was a reach. It obviously was a big payday for him in Denver. I don't think that's going to work out. Didn't work out here with the Niners. They drafted Aaron Banks in the second round. That was the most draft capital they've used on offensive linemen outside of drafting them in the 5th, 6th, and 7th rounds. They obviously traded for Trent Williams, but that was a no-brainer. You want to go trade for Trent Williams because you're not giving up much capital. They had signed Alex Mack, Richburg. They tried to address the center position. They just didn't hit on it. So it doesn't make sense that the Niners constantly in the draft don't pay attention to the offensive line, but then they'll try to sign older free agents like John Feliciano, Alex Mack in his final years. They signed Richburg to a big deal from the Giants at center, but they won't draft offensive linemen. This year, they're not going after linemen. And like so far, it's concerning, but it's also, I understand you don't want to overpay because some of these linemen are getting paid $17-20 million at guard, which is expensive. And why when I saw the initial signing for Colton McKivitz was I liked it because he could play guard. And I knew the guard position. I said it on the last show that I knew the guard position was going to get a very increase on payday. So they made sense in terms of his versatility, and he's a tackle. They get paid a lot. So Neil says, obviously the money shows they have belief in McKivitz, but what do your sources say about what they see in him that they paid him like they did? I didn't ask about that. There's no reason for me to ask on Colton McKivitz. We know what he is. The Niners feel comfortable. They're confident in starting him. They're the way they have worded things, it just tells you they feel confident in starting him if they have to. They did it last year when they literally said, we don't think someone as a rookie could come in and compete with him day one and win that job. They didn't make any moves at right tackle. They truly look at Colton McKivitz as someone they're comfortable playing, but he's not the future at right tackle. What tells me that he's not the future at right tackle is when you look at Colton McKivitz, if they really wanted to, they could have signed him to a multi-year deal and kept his APY, which is average per year, down. And if he became that player that they think he could be, they look like geniuses for having him on a 4-year deal where he's making 4-year, $28 million deal, $7 million as a quality starting right tackle. But that's not the case. They don't believe that. If that was the case, they would have did that. They would have signed him to a longer deal. Now, is McKivitz better at guard than Burford? I think McKivitz is better at guard than Burford this entire time. And I said it day one. Spencer Burford has the traits and the qualities to be a high-level tackle. He has the athleticism, the strength. He has the speed, the hand strikes. Tackles cannot move in and play guard automatically. Like guards can't move out and play tackle. It's a much different steps. It's much different hand placement. The knee bend is different at guard. The fact that they moved Burford to guard was always, to me, interesting when he played left tackle in college. And then they were like, you know what? We're offensive lineman gurus. We could change him to a guard. Has not worked out. Move him to tackle and let him compete at tackle. Whoever loses that battle is your backup offensive lineman. If, for example, if it's McKivitz who loses that job, let him compete at right guard. Make the offensive line better by putting them in positions where they naturally play. Now, I get McKivitz is probably not going to ever play guard for the Niners again because he played tackle and he played it at a well level. He played it solid. It was average. So the Niners big moves so far of the day. Leonard Floyd on a 2-year, $20 million deal. $12 million is guaranteed in year one, which if you take his average value per year, he'd be the 31st highest paid edge rusher in the NFL. It's a solid, cheap deal for a healthy, productive edge rusher who is a little bit older than you would like. The team's kind of getting a little bit older than younger. You'd want them to get younger, but I don't think the Niners are done. I think I might have to come back on later today or tomorrow to discuss another big signing. Tomorrow I'll be on with David Lichty. We'll be doing a mock draft, but it's going to be a little bit incomplete because we don't know who's going to be finished signing and stuff like that. So hopefully they sign all their players today, so we have it kind of an eye on what they're going to be doing in the draft. I know what position I'm going. I know what player I'm going. Don't miss out. Tomorrow I will tweet it out. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe button. Hit that like button. What it does for me is it pushes the channel's algorithm out a little bit more for more people to see. If you have not checked it out, Yesterday, I recorded a show with Grant Kahn. Shout out to Grant for having me on his show. We talked about free agency, draft rumors, reports, what we were hearing. Check it out. Do me a favor, hit that like button. Follow me on Twitter. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm out of here. Hopefully Leonard Floyd is the answer and we win our sixth Super Bowl this year. Let's go.